I'm Diana Jackson, and this morning started like every other Tuesday in Chattanooga. Steam rising from my coffee cup, scissors gleaming under fluorescent lights, and the same 5 regulars scheduled for their weekly touch-ups. That was before the news changed everything. "Did you hear about the climbing gym?" Mrs. Patterson asked, settling into my chair with her usual dramatic sigh. "Right downtown, where the old warehouse used to be." I focused on sectioning her silver hair, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest. 29 years old, and I'd never climbed anything higher than a stepladder. The thought terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "Rock climbing's dangerous," I murmured, more to myself than her. "That's what makes it exciting." The voice came from behind us, smooth as silk and completely unfamiliar. I turned to see her framed in my doorway like something from a vintage magazine. Blonde hair swept into perfect victory rolls, red lips that belonged in a 1940s film, and eyes the color of summer sky. She wore a fitted emerald dress that hugged every curve, paired with genuine leather gloves and a small beaded purse. "I'm Madeline Bryant," she said, extending one gloved hand. "I need someone who understands classic styling." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows shot up. "Small towns don't get women like this every day." "What exactly are you looking for?" I managed, acutely aware of my own plain ponytail and flour-dusted apron. "Victory rolls. The real thing, not some modern interpretation." Madeline's fingers traced the air near her temple. "I have a photo shoot this weekend. Vintage fashion feature for a Nashville magazine." My hands had styled thousands of heads over the years, but suddenly they felt clumsy and uncertain. Victory rolls required precision, patience, and a deep understanding of 1940s technique. Most stylists today couldn't pull off authentic period styling. "That's quite specific," I said carefully. "Most people want something easier to maintain." "I'm not most people." The way she said it made my pulse quicken. There was challenge in her voice, something that suggested she was used to getting exactly what she wanted. "Can you do it or not?" Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. "Diana's the best stylist in 3 counties. If anyone can do those fancy rolls, it's her." I caught Madeline's reflection studying me in the mirror, those blue eyes taking inventory of my capabilities. The scrutiny should have made me nervous. Instead, it lit something on fire inside my chest. "I can do it," I heard myself say. "But it'll take time. Real victory rolls aren't rushed." "How long?" 2 hours. Maybe 3 if you want it perfect." Something shifted in her expression, like she was reassessing me. "Perfect is exactly what I want." Mrs. Patterson practically vibrated with curiosity as I finished her. Cut, clearly wanting to stay and witness whatever was about to unfold. But I ushered her out with promises to call later, suddenly needing privacy, for what felt like the most important styling session of my career. "So," Madeline said, settling into my chair with fluid grace, "tell me about this climbing gym that has everyone talking." "You heard that?" "Hard not to. Small town conversations carry." She met my eyes in the mirror. "You seemed interested." I began removing her pins, letting that perfect blonde hair cascade over her shoulders. It felt like silk between my fingers, finer than anything I'd worked with before. "I've never climbed anything," I admitted. "Heights make me dizzy." Sometimes the things that scare us most are exactly what we need. There was something in her voice, a hint that she wasn't just talking about climbing. I started sectioning her hair, trying to focus on the technical aspects instead, of how close we were, how her perfume smelled like jasmine and something darker. "What brings you to Chattanooga?" I asked, reaching for my styling tools. "Change of scenery. Sometimes you need to step outside your usual world to figure out who you really are." Her words hung in the air between us as I began the intricate process of creating authentic victory rolls. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this stranger with perfect hair and mysterious motives was about to turn my predictable little world completely upside down. 3 days after styling Madeline's perfect victory rolls, I found myself standing outside, rock-solid climbing gym at 6 in the morning, questioning every decision that led me here. My hands shook as I gripped the door handle. The interior smelled like chalk dust and determination. Colorful holds dotted towering walls that stretched toward infinity. My stomach dropped, just looking up. "First time?" The teenage girl behind the counter had arms like steel cables and a smile that suggested falling was optional. Is it that obvious? The terror face gives it away. Don't worry, everyone starts somewhere. She fitted me with a harness that felt like medieval torture equipment, and handed me shoes that looked designed for contortionists. 20 minutes later, I was staring at a wall that might as well have been Mount Everest. Just trust your feet, the instructor said. Beginners always overthink it. Right. Trust my feet on holds the size of golf balls, while 20 feet of empty air waited below. I made it exactly 6 moves before panic set in. My muscles locked, my breathing turned shallow, and suddenly I couldn't. I remember why leaving solid ground had seemed like a good idea. Breathe through it. A familiar voice called from below. I looked down to see Madeline standing near the wall's base, and for a moment I forgot I was terrified. She wore fitted climbing pants and a tank top that revealed toned shoulders, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that somehow still looked effortlessly elegant. What are you doing here? I managed between ragged breaths. Same thing as you, I imagine, facing fears. She started up the wall beside mine with fluid grace, moving like she'd been born on vertical surfaces. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Within minutes, she was at my level, separated by only a few feet of textured wall. Don't look down, she said softly. Look at the next hold. Just the next one. I can't move. Yes, you can. Your right foot. See that blue hold about 2 feet up? It's bigger than it looks. I forced myself to focus on her voice instead of the emptiness below. Somehow, my foot found the hold. Good. Now your left hand. There's a jug just above your shoulder. Step by step, hold by hold, she talked me up that wall. Her voice became my anchor, steady and sure when nothing else was. You're almost there, she said when the top seemed impossibly close. My fingers finally gripped the finishing hold, and suddenly I was 25. Feet above the ground, heart hammering with equal parts terror and triumph. I did it, I whispered. You did. Madeline was right beside me now, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in her blue eyes, close enough to notice the way her lips curved when she smiled. The safety of the top platform felt intimate, like we were alone above the world. Thank you, I said. I never would have made it without you. Sometimes we all need someone to show us we're stronger than we think. She reached out to brush chalk dust from my cheek, and the simple touch sent electricity through my entire nervous system. Her fingers lingered a moment longer than necessary. Diana? Yeah? You've got beautiful eyes. I noticed at the salon, but up here, with the light. The rest of her words got lost somewhere between her lips and my sudden inability to breathe properly again. But this time, it wasn't from fear. We should probably get down, I said, though moving was the last thing I wanted to do. Probably. Neither of us moved. The gym continued around us, other climbers starting their routes, but it felt like we existed in our own suspended moment. Then Madeline leaned closer, ostensibly to check my harness setup. Your belay device is twisted, she murmured, her breath warm against my ear. Her fingers worked at the metal gear attached to my harness, and I was grateful for the rope system keeping me upright because my knees felt like water. There. She looked up from the equipment, and suddenly her face was inches from mine. The kiss happened like gravity, natural, inevitable, impossible to fight. Her lips were soft and tasted like mint chapstick, and something uniquely her. It lasted 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, before she pulled back with wide eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. The words came out rougher than I intended, but she smiled, and I knew I'd said exactly the right thing. We really should get down now, she said, but her voice carried a promise that this was just the beginning. As we rappelled back to Earth, I realized the view from up there had changed everything. Not just the city spread out below, but the way I saw myself, the way I saw her, the way I saw what might be possible between us. My feet touched solid ground, but I was still flying. That kiss on the climbing wall haunted me for 2 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Madeline's lips against mine, tasted that hint of mint, remembered the way her breathing changed when she pulled away. By Thursday morning, I couldn't stand it anymore. I texted her, "Want to go thrift shopping? I know all the best spots." Her response came back in seconds. I thought you'd never ask. We met at Granny's attic, a sprawling warehouse filled with decades of cast-off treasures. Madeline emerged from her convertible wearing a 1950 circle skirt and white blouse that made her look like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread. This place is perfect, she breathed, surveying racks of forgotten fashion. I watched her move through the store like a curator in a museum, running her fingers over fabrics, checking construction details, holding pieces up to the light to examine their authenticity. Most people just see old clothes, I said. You see history. Every garment tells a story. She pulled out a navy dress with tiny pearl buttons. This was probably someone's church dress. See how the hem's been mended? She wore it for years, loved it enough to keep fixing it. The way she spoke about vintage pieces made me see them differently. What looked like musty old fabric to me became love letters from the past in her hands. Try this, she said, holding up a burgundy sweater that probably dated from the 1940s. I don't really do vintage. Today you do. She led me to the small fitting room in the back, pulling the curtain closed behind us. The space was barely big enough for one person, let alone two, which meant we were pressed close together as I pulled off my t-shirt. It's beautiful on you, she said softly, adjusting the sweater's neckline. Her fingers brushed my collarbone as she smoothed the fabric, and I forgot how to breathe normally. The fitting room felt charged, intimate, like we were sharing secrets. Madeline, That kiss at the gym. She went very still. What about it? I can't stop thinking about it. Good or bad thinking? Very good thinking. She smiled then, that slow curve of lips that made my stomach flip. I've been thinking about it too. We spent 3 hours combing through every rack, every bin, every dusty corner of that store. Madeline found a 1960 cocktail dress that fit like it was made for her. While I discovered I actually looked good in high-waisted trousers and fitted blouses from bygone eras. You're a natural, she said as I modeled a forest green dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. Or I have a good teacher. By the time we loaded our purchases into her car, storm clouds were gathering overhead. The first fat raindrops hit her windshield as we pulled out of the parking lot. My place is closer, I said when the sky opened up, turning the world into sheets of gray water. We ran from her car to my front door, laughing and soaked despite the short distance. My apartment felt smaller with her in it, but in the best possible way. I'll make coffee, I said, suddenly nervous about being alone with her in my space. Diana. I turned to find her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Come here. I crossed to where she stood by my window, still damp from the rain, still beautiful enough to stop my heart. I need you to know something, she said. I didn't come to Chattanooga looking for this. This? You. Us. Whatever's happening between us. Thunder rolled overhead as she reached up to touch my face, her thumb tracing my cheekbone. I've been running from connections for years, she continued. Moving from city to city, never staying long enough to let anyone matter. What changed? You did. The way you talked me through that climb, the way you see beauty in old things, the way you kiss like you're not afraid of anything. I'm afraid of a lot of things. Not this. Not us. She was right. Despite the uncertainty, despite not knowing what tomorrow would bring, this felt like the most natural thing in the world. I have wine, I said. We could wait out the storm. I'd like that. We settled on my couch with glasses of cheap red wine and the sound of rain against windows. Somehow we ended up tangled together, her head on my shoulder, my fingers playing with her hair. Tell me about your travels, I said. Later, she murmured, tilting her face up to mine. Right now, I just want to be here with you. This kiss was different from the one at the climbing gym. Slower, deeper, full of promise and possibility. When we finally broke apart, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened next, this woman had already changed everything. Madeline became my Friday regular, though her appointments had nothing to do with needing her hair done. She'd arrive at 4, lock the door behind her, and we'd pretend she was just another client while she told me stories about vintage fashion and I ran my fingers through her perfect blonde hair. You don't actually need styling, I said on her third visit, sectioning her hair with practiced movements. No. But I need this. She meant the closeness, the excuse to touch, the way our eyes met in the salon mirror while I worked. Professional boundaries had become something we danced around rather than observed. "What happened to that 1,960 seconds dress you bought?" I asked, securing a curl with a bobby pin. "It needs alterations." The woman who owned it was taller than me. I could help with that. Her eyes found mine in the reflection. "You sew too?" "My grandmother taught me. Said every woman should know how to make clothes fit properly." "Is there anything you can't do with your hands?" The question hung between us, loaded with possibility. My fingers stilled in her hair as heat crept up my neck. "Madeline? Sorry. That came out more suggestive than I meant. Did it?" She turned in the chair to face me directly, abandoning the pretense of the mirror. Maybe not entirely. I was supposed to maintain professional distance. Keep working. Keep talking about safe subjects like weather and local events. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, close enough to see the flecks of silver in her blue eyes. "We're alone," she said softly. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. My hands were still tangled in her hair, bobby pins scattered on the floor around us. She reached up to trace my wrist with one finger, and the simple touch sent electricity straight through me. "Diana? Yeah? I've been thinking about kissing you again since that night at your apartment." "Just thinking?" "Dreaming." She stood slowly, never breaking eye contact, wondering what would happen if we stopped pretending this is just about hair. The space between us disappeared. Her hands found my waist, pulling me closer until there was no distance left. This kiss was different from the others. Hungrier, more certain, full of weeks of building tension. I backed her against the styling chair, my hands fisting in the silk of her blouse. She made a soft sound against my mouth that shot straight through my composure. "Tell me to stop," I whispered against her neck. "Never." Her fingers worked at the buttons of my shirt while I kissed the hollow of her throat. She tasted like honey and smelled like jasmine, and I was drowning in the sensory overload of finally touching her the way I'd been imagining. "Not here," she breathed, even as her hands slipped beneath my open shirt. "Why not?" "Because when I make love to you for the first time, it won't be in a salon chair." The word "first" hit me like a promise. Not if, but when. Not a single encounter, but the beginning of something. "My apartment's upstairs," I managed. "Perfect." We barely made it up those stairs. Hands and mouths and whispered words that would have scandalized my conservative clientele. By the time we reached my bedroom, my shirt was gone, and her skirt was unzipped. She pushed me gently onto the bed, following me down until her weight settled over me. The late afternoon sun filtered through my curtains, painting everything in golden light. "You're beautiful," she said, tracing patterns on my skin with fingers that knew exactly how to make me shiver. I pulled her down for another kiss, deeper this time, full of need and promise. Her hands mapped the curves of my body while I lost myself in the taste of her mouth, the silk of her hair falling around us like a curtain. We moved together like we'd been lovers for years instead of minutes, finding rhythms and responses that felt natural as breathing. She whispered my name against my shoulder blade while I discovered sensitive spots that made her arch beneath me. Time became fluid. There was only her skin against mine, her breath in my ear, the perfect weight of her pressed close. Every touch felt electric, every kiss a revelation. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled like her perfume, hearts still racing, hands still exploring with gentle reverence. "That was," she started, then trailed off. "Yeah. I don't do this," she said quietly. "Get involved. Stay in one place long enough for things to matter." I propped myself up on one elbow to look at her properly. Her hair was thoroughly mussed, lips swollen from kissing, and she'd never looked more beautiful. "What makes this different?" "You," she said simply. "Everything about you." I kissed her forehead, tasting salt and something uniquely her. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." The setting sun painted my bedroom walls pink and gold as we held each other, both, knowing that whatever came next, we'd crossed a line there was no going back from, and neither of us wanted to. The sound of shattering glass woke me at 3 in the morning. For a split second, I thought it was from my apartment upstairs, but then I heard voices from below, my salon. I grabbed my phone and slipped down the back staircase, adrenaline making every shadow look dangerous. The front door hung open, bell chiming weakly in the night breeze. My salon looked like a tornado had torn through it. Styling chairs overturned, product bottles smashed across the floor, my cash register gaping open and empty. They'd even scattered my scissors like metallic confetti. "Damn it," I whispered, surveying the destruction. That's when I found it, a crumpled piece of paper tucked under my main styling chair, barely visible among the debris. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was messy, desperate. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt your business. My daughter Sophia is sick and I can't afford her medicine. The insurance won't cover experimental treatment. I know this doesn't make it right, but I'm drowning. If you find this, I work at the diner on Market Street, Maria Santos. Please don't call the police. I'll pay you back somehow." I read it 3 times, my anger dissolving into something more complicated. Whoever Maria was, she wasn't some random criminal. She was a mother making desperate choices. My phone buzzed. "Madeline? Are you okay?" I saw police lights from my hotel window. Someone broke into the salon. "I'm coming over. Madeline, it's 3 in the morning." "I don't care." She arrived in silk pajamas and a hastily thrown-on coat, her hair in a messy bun that somehow still looked elegant. The sight of her made my chest tight with emotions I couldn't name. "Oh, Diana." She surveyed the damage with wide eyes. "What did they take?" "About 200 from the register. But look at this." I handed her the note. She read it silently, her expression shifting from anger to something softer. "Maria Santos," she said thoughtfully. "That name sounds familiar. You know her?" "Maybe. There was a woman at the diner yesterday when I grabbed coffee. Young, looked exhausted. The cook called her Maria." I sank into the one chair that wasn't overturned. What kind of person am I if I press charges against someone trying to save their kid? A human being in an impossible situation. Madeline knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in hers. "What if we found another way?" "What do you mean?" "What if we helped her instead of punishing her?" I stared at our joined hands, thinking about the desperation it would take to break into someone's business. "You want to give money to the person who trashed my salon?" "I want to help a mother save her child." That was the moment I knew I was completely gone for this woman. Not just attracted, not just infatuated, but falling into something deep and permanent. How do we even find her? We start with the diner. At 6 in the morning, the Market Street diner was already buzzing, with early shift workers and insomniacs seeking coffee salvation. Madeline and I sat in a corner booth, nursing cups that could strip paint and waiting. She appeared around 7, slight, dark-haired, moving with the careful efficiency of someone running on empty. The cook behind the counter called out Maria. "Table 6 needs more syrup." And we knew we'd found her. "That's her," I whispered. Maria Santos looked maybe 25, with tired eyes and hands that shook slightly when she poured coffee. She moved like someone carrying the weight of the world. "How do we approach this?" I asked. "Carefully." When Maria came to refill our cups, Madeline spoke quietly. "Excuse me, are you Maria Santos?" The woman went very still. "Who's asking?" "I'm Diana," I said gently. "You were in my salon last night." Color drained from Maria's face. She glanced toward the exit like she might run. "Please don't," Madeline said. "We're not here to cause trouble." "I'll pay you back," Maria whispered. "Every penny. It might take years, but I swear—" "We don't want your money," I interrupted. That stopped her. "What?" "We want to help your daughter." Maria's legs seemed to give out. She slumped into the booth beside me, tears starting to flow. "Sophia has leukemia. She's 8. The treatment that might save her costs $60,000. "What about insurance?" Madeline asked. "They call it experimental. Won't cover a dime." Maria wiped her eyes with a napkin. "I've sold everything, worked 3 jobs. I was down to my last option. Breaking into salons? I know how it sounds, but when your baby might die?" She shook her head. I left that note hoping maybe you'd understand. Maybe you wouldn't hate me completely. I looked at Madeline, saw my own thoughts reflected in her face. What if we paid for Sophia's treatment? Maria stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Why would you do that? Because everyone deserves a chance, Madeline said simply, and because sometimes good people are forced into bad situations. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, I said. It's community. It's what people do for each other. Maria burst into fresh tears, and suddenly we were all hugging in that diner booth, while truckers and construction workers pretended not to notice. Sometimes the most life-changing moments happen in the most ordinary places. Tracking down Maria's story took 3 days of phone calls and hospital visits. What we discovered broke my heart. 8-year-old Sofia Santos had been fighting leukemia for 2 years, and the experimental treatment her doctors recommended was indeed their last hope. I can cover the medical costs, Madeline said, as we sat in her hotel room, paperwork spread across the bed. I have some investments that can be liquidated quickly. That's $60,000. It's just money. I stared at her. This woman who'd appeared in my life like a vintage-dressed guardian angel. Who are you really? She set down the hospital forms and looked at me with those blue eyes that held secrets I was only beginning to understand. Someone who learned that money means nothing if you don't use it to make things better. Madeline. My grandmother left me a trust fund. I've spent years running from that responsibility, pretending I could escape my family's wealth by hopping from city to city. She reached for my hand. Maybe this is why I'm really here. We met Maria at the hospital that afternoon, where Sofia was receiving her regular treatment. The little girl had her mother's dark eyes but a smile that could power the entire building. Mama said you're helping me get better, Sofia said, looking between Madeline and me with curious trust. That's right, sweetheart. I managed around the lump in my throat. Are you ladies married? Maria blushed. Sofia, you can't ask people that. Why not? They hold hands like married people? Madeline squeezed my fingers gently. We care about each other very much, she told Sofia. Good. Mama needs someone to care about her too. While the doctors explained Sofia's treatment plan, Maria pulled us aside in the hallway. I found a job, she said. At a vintage clothing boutique downtown. The owner says she needs someone who understands quality fabrics. That's wonderful, Madeline said, but something in her voice sounded strange. The funny thing is, she specifically asked for me, said someone had recommended me personally. Maria's eyes narrowed slightly. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Maybe, Madeline admitted. You bought the boutique. I invested in it. There's a difference. Madeline. I stared at her in amazement. You bought a business to give Maria a job? I bought a business because Chattanooga needs a proper vintage store. Hiring Maria just made sense. Maria started crying again, but this time it was different, relief mixed with gratitude and something like hope. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Take care of that little girl, I said. That's all the thanks we need. That evening, Madeline drove me to her new purchase, a narrow storefront. On Market Street with large windows and original hardwood floors. The previous owner had used it as an antique store, but Madeline's vision transformed the space completely. I've been thinking about staying, she said as we walked through the empty store. Really staying, not just until I get bored. What changed your mind? You. This. She gestured around the space. The idea of building something instead of always running. I pulled her close in the middle of that empty store, surrounded by possibilities and the scent of old wood and new beginnings. I love you, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. She went very still in my arms. Diana. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But I love you. It is too soon, she said softly, and my heart started to crack. But I love you too. This kiss was different from all the others. Deeper, more certain, full of promises about the future we might build together. When we finally broke apart, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Take me home, she whispered. To your place. I want to wake up in your bed. We barely made it up the stairs to my apartment. Hands and mouths and whispered confessions that we'd both been thinking about forever. Always. About the way some people just fit together like missing pieces of a puzzle. She pushed me onto my bed with gentle urgency, her fingers working at the buttons of my shirt while I traced the line of her collarbone with my tongue. The taste of her skin made me dizzy with want. "I need you," she breathed against my ear, and I was already lost. We moved together in the darkness, finding rhythms and responses that felt like coming home. Her hands knew exactly how to make me arch beneath her, while I discovered the sounds she made when I kissed the sensitive spot just below her jaw. There was something different about making love when you knew it meant forever. Every touch felt more significant. Every kiss a promise we were making to each other without words. Afterward, we lay wrapped around each other while the moon painted silver patterns on my bedroom walls. "No more running," she said quietly. "Promise? I'm buying a building tomorrow. Pretty hard to run when you own real estate." I laughed against her shoulder, tasting salt in the lingering sweetness of her perfume. "What about your nomadic lifestyle?" "Overrated. Turns out home isn't a place." She tilted my chin up so I could see her face in the moonlight. "It's a person." The whispers started the following Monday. Mrs. Patterson canceled her standing appointment with a vague excuse about trying someone new. By Tuesday, 3 more regulars had called to reschedule indefinitely. By Wednesday, I knew exactly what was happening. "It's that woman you've been spending time with," Mrs. Henderson said when she came in for her weekly wash and set. She was one of my few remaining loyal clients, though even she looked uncomfortable. "People are talking." "About what?" "About how you two look at each other, about her staying overnight at your place." Mrs. Henderson's voice dropped to a whisper. "About what kind of relationship you really have." My hands stilled in her silver hair. "And what kind of relationship do they think that is?" "The unnatural kind." The word hit me like a slap. Unnatural. As if loving Madeline was some kind of disease I'd caught instead of the most natural thing in the world. "I see. I'm not saying I agree with the gossip," Mrs. Henderson said quickly. "But this is a small town, Diana. People have expectations. Their expectations aren't my responsibility. No, but their business is your livelihood." She was right, and we both knew it. My appointment book was getting thinner each day, as word spread through Chattanooga's gossip network like wildfire. The woman who'd been everyone's favorite hairstylist was suddenly persona non grata. "Maybe things will blow over," Mrs. Henderson suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. That afternoon, I found myself alone in the salon for the first time in 3 years. No appointments, no walk-ins, just me and the sound of my own breathing. The cash register held exactly $40 from Mrs. Henderson's visit. Madeline arrived at 5, with takeout Chinese food and a determined smile. "How was your day?" she asked, though she must have seen my empty appointment book. "Quiet." "Diana." 3 more cancellations. 2 people crossed the street to avoid me at the grocery store. And Mrs. Murphy told her granddaughter I was a bad influence who might corrupt other women. Madeline set down the food containers with more force than necessary. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? 2 weeks ago I was just Diana the hairdresser. Now I'm Diana the lesbian who's corrupting the moral fabric of small-town Tennessee." "You're the same person you've always been." "No," I said quietly. "I'm not. I'm happier now. More myself than I've ever been. And they can't stand that." She crossed to me, taking my face in her hands with that gentle touch that always made my walls crumble. "I could leave," she said softly. "Go back to Nashville. Let things settle down." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Running away won't solve anything." "Then what do we do?" Before I could answer, we heard voices outside. Through the window, I saw Madeline's vintage convertible surrounded by a small crowd. Someone had written Sinner across her windshield in what looked like red lipstick. "Damn them," Madeline breathed. But I was already moving toward the door. Enough was enough. "Diana, don't," she called, but I was already outside. The group scattered like startled birds when they saw me coming, all except for Tom Morrison, who owned the hardware store 2 blocks down. He stood his ground with the self-righteous stance of a man who believed God was on his side. "You got something to say to me, Tom?" I asked. "Just that decent folks are worried about the kind of influence you're having on this community." "What influence is that?" "Coming on to married women, flaunting your lifestyle, corrupting children who might look up to you." "I've never come on to anyone's wife, and the only lifestyle I've flaunted is being a good businesswoman and neighbor for the past 5 years. That was before you took up with her. He jerked his thumb toward Madeline, who had appeared beside me. Her name is Madeline, I said steadily, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's an abomination. No, Madeline said quietly. Hate is an abomination. Love never is. Tom's face reddened, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Tom Morrison, you ought to be ashamed. We turned to see Maria Santos walking toward us, still wearing her waitress uniform from the diner. These women saved my daughter's life, she continued, her voice carrying across the small crowd that had begun to gather. While you were spreading gossip and judgment, they were paying for a little girl's cancer treatment. That doesn't make their lifestyle right, Tom protested. Their lifestyle? Maria stepped closer to him. You mean the lifestyle where they help strangers in need? Where they create jobs and invest in this community? Where they treat people with kindness instead of judgment? Maria, people don't understand. Someone in the crowd started. I understand plenty, she interrupted. I understand that my daughter is alive because of these women. I understand that Diana never once made me feel ashamed for what I did to her salon. And I understand that if this town drives away people like that, we all lose something important. The crowd was murmuring now, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncomfortable. Tom Morrison seemed to realize he was losing ground. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Maria replied firmly. At least the hate is over. Some of us choose love instead. As the crowd dispersed, Maria squeezed my hand. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like, she replied. Back inside the salon, Madeline and I held each other in the midst of my empty business, both understanding that everything had just changed. The battle lines were drawn now, those who would accept us and those who wouldn't. I'm scared, I admitted. Me too. But we're in this together now. What if I lose the salon? Then we'll figure something else out, together. The word together settled around us like a promise, stronger than fear, more powerful than hate. By Thursday morning, I was ready to pack it all in. My appointment book looked like a desert, empty, barren, hopeless. I sat in my salon staring at the for sale sign I'd printed, but couldn't bring myself to put in the window. You're giving up? Madeline asked when she found me there at noon, still in pajamas, still staring at that damn sign. I'm being realistic. 3 clients this week. 3. I can't pay rent on 3 haircuts. So we find other options. Like what? Moving to Nashville where people might actually want their hair done by someone like me? She sat in the chair beside me, reaching for my hands. Or we wait this out. Change takes time in small towns. I don't have time. I have bills. That's when Maria burst through the door, breathless and excited, followed by 2 women I didn't recognize. Diana, thank God you're here, Maria said. This is Sarah and Jennifer from the college. They've been looking everywhere for you. The younger women smiled nervously. Sarah had pink streaks in her brown hair, while Jennifer sported an elaborate undercut that needed professional maintenance. We heard what's happening, Sarah said. About the boycott and everything. Word spread to the university, Jennifer added. There's a whole community of us who want to support your business. Us? Students, faculty, staff. People who understand what it's like to be different in small towns. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing me a social media post. We've been organizing. The post had dozens of comments from people offering support, asking for appointments, sharing stories about struggling to find accepting businesses. There's also this, Jennifer said, handing me a newspaper clipping. It was from the Chattanooga Free Press, a small article titled, Local Businesswomen Support Cancer Treatment. The piece detailed how Madeline and I had helped Sophia Santos, describing us as community-minded entrepreneurs working to make Chattanooga more compassionate. People are talking about more than just your personal life now, Maria said. They're talking about your character. How did the newspaper find out? Maria blushed slightly. I might have called them. Figured people should know the truth about who you really are. Over the next hour, my salon filled with an entirely new clientele. Young professionals, college students, a few older women who'd driven from neighboring towns. People who looked at Madeline and me and saw who we were rather than who we loved. I need a complete style overhaul, said Rebecca, a graduate student with hair down to her waist. Something bold, something that says I'm not hiding anymore. I can do bold, I said, feeling energy return to my voice for the first time in days. By evening, my appointment book was fuller than it had been in weeks. Different names, different faces, but genuine clients who wanted what I offered. It's not the same customer base, I told Madeline as we closed up together. No, it's better. These people chose you knowing exactly who you are. Think it'll be enough? Look around. The salon buzzed with new energy. Rebecca sat under the dryer reading a book about feminist theory while getting highlights. 2 college seniors debated politics while waiting for cuts. Jennifer scheduled weekly maintenance appointments for her undercut. This is what community looks like, Madeline said. Not the people who reject difference, but the ones who celebrate it. That night she stayed over again, and we made love with a different kind of intensity. Not desperate like before, but grateful. Grateful for finding each other, for surviving the storm, for discovering. We were stronger together than either community could tear apart. I was thinking, she said afterward, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. Dangerous habit. What if we expanded? The salon? Everything. Your business, my boutique. What if we created something bigger? A whole district of businesses that welcome everyone. I turned to look at her properly. You mean like a safe space? I mean like the future. Places where people can be themselves without fear, where love is celebrated instead of condemned. Think other business owners would join us? Maria's already interested. And I met a couple who wants to open a coffee shop but were worried about acceptance. There's a bookstore owner thinking about relocating from Nashville. I could see it taking shape. A small but vibrant district where diversity was strength rather than scandal. Where young people could find community and older people could discover acceptance. It would take time, I said. The best things do. Money? I have some ideas about that. Opposition? From people whose opinions stopped mattering the moment they chose hate over compassion. I kissed her then, deep and slow, tasting possibility and promise on her lips. Partner? She asked when we broke apart. In business and everything else? Everything else covers a lot of ground. I'm hoping it covers forever. She smiled that smile that had first stopped my heart in the salon doorway weeks ago. Forever sounds perfect. Outside, Chattanooga slept while we planned our future. 2 women, who'd found love and decided to build something beautiful from it. 6 months later, I stood in my transformed salon watching Madeline put the finishing touches on her window display across the street. What had started as desperate hope had bloomed into something extraordinary. Blend the roots more, I called to Rebecca, my newest employee and former client. She was working on a complete color transformation for a woman who'd driven 3 hours from Memphis specifically to find us. My business had tripled. Madeline's boutique drew fashion enthusiasts from across the Southeast. The coffee shop next door stayed busy with students and young professionals who discovered our little corner of acceptance. 5 minutes, Madeline called through the window, adjusting a vintage hat on her mannequin. Tonight was our official ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Rainbow Row, 6 businesses that had banded together to create Chattanooga's first officially designated inclusive district. The mayor was coming, along with reporters and what looked like half the city. You nervous? Maria asked, appearing with Sophia in tow. The little girl's hair had grown back thick and curly after her successful treatment, and she insisted on getting it trimmed at my salon every month. Terrified, I admitted. Good nervous or bad nervous? I'll tell you in an hour. The ceremony crowd was bigger than I'd expected. Students, families, older couples, even some of my former conservative clients who'd quietly started returning over the past few months. Tom Morrison lurked at the back, his expression sour but his presence notable. Mayor Jackson stepped to the microphone. What started as controversy has become community, she began. These businesses represent the best of what Chattanooga can be, inclusive, innovative, and kind. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I'd like Diana Jackson and Madeline Bryant to say a few words. My stomach dropped. We hadn't planned speeches. Madeline squeezed my hand as we approached the microphone. You start, she whispered. 6 months ago, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. People told me I had to choose between love and livelihood. that I couldn't be myself and still belong in this community. The crowd was silent, listening. They were wrong. Not because the choice isn't real, it is. But because community isn't about who excludes you. It's about who stands with you when things get difficult. I looked at Maria, at Rebecca, at the college students who'd become my regulars. This district exists because people chose inclusion over isolation, love over fear. That's not a gay story or a straight story. That's a human story. Madeline stepped to the microphone. Diana and I fell in love in the most ordinary way, over hair appointments and climbing walls and thrift store adventures. What made it extraordinary wasn't who we are, but the community that grew around us. She gestured toward the 6 businesses that made up our row. Every person who shops here, works here, or supports what we've built is part of something bigger than any individual story. You're part of the future. The applause was warmer this time, more sustained. I saw tears on several faces, including Mrs. Henderson, who gave me a small wave from the middle of the crowd. Mayor Jackson cut the ribbon with oversized scissors borrowed from my salon. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and suddenly we were surrounded by well-wishers and reporters asking questions about our economic development model. "How does it feel?" a reporter asked me. "Like coming home," I said, watching Madeline navigate interviews with the grace she brought to everything. Later, after the crowd dispersed and the media packed up, we sat on the bench, outside my salon, watching the sunset paint our little street golden. "You know what the best part is?" I said. "What?" "Sophia getting to grow up in a place where love comes in all different packages." As if summoned by her name, Sophia ran over from where she'd been playing, with other kids whose parents had lingered after the ceremony. "Miss Diana, are you and Miss Madeline getting married?" "Sophia," Maria called. "Don't ask personal questions." "It's okay," Madeline said, pulling the little girl close. "Why do you ask?" "Because married people wear rings, and you both have new ones." I looked down at my left hand, where a simple gold band caught the fading light. Madeline wore a matching one, though we'd been so busy with the ceremony that no one had noticed them yet. "You're very observant," I said. "So you are married?" "As of yesterday," Madeline confirmed. "At the courthouse with Maria and Rebecca as witnesses." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because some things are private and perfect just as they are." Sophia considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. "Can I call you Aunt Diana and Aunt Madeline?" "I'd like that very much," I said, my throat tight with emotion. As the sun set over Rainbow Row, I leaned against my wife's shoulder and watched our chosen family, Maria and Sophia, Rebecca and her girlfriend, the coffee shop owners and their kids, celebrate in the spaces we'd created together. "No regrets?" Madeline asked softly. "About which part? Falling in love with you, standing up to ignorance, or accidentally starting a small business revolution? All of it." I kissed her temple, tasting sunshine and possibility. Not a single one. A year ago, I'd been just Diana the hairdresser, invisible and safe. Now I was Diana Jackson Bryant, entrepreneur, wife, and accidental activist, living proof that love really can change everything. One conversation, one client, one brave choice at a time. The future stretched ahead like an uncharted climbing wall, challenging but full of handholds I hadn't seen before. And I wasn't afraid of the height anymore.